Today I'd like to talk with you a little bit about self-care. So good self-care means cultivating a healthy relationship with ourselves, with others, and with our spirituality in whatever form that might take. So when we think about our relationship with ourselves, one of the first things we need to think about is our thoughts and beliefs. What do we hold inside our minds and hearts? Is it negative? Is it positive? Do we think that we're great people, or do we think we're awful? And do we speak words of kindness to ourselves, or do we speak mean words? Do we berate ourselves? Our thoughts and beliefs really set the tone for how we act in the world. If we are constantly beating ourselves up, we're probably less likely to do other things well. So when we think about the other things that we do, we want to think about how we eat. Do we include lots of vegetables in our diet? Do we eat things that nourish our bodies? We want to think about how we move our bodies. Do we move in ways that are kind to our bodies? That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go for a run. Not everyone can just take off and go for a run. But do we do something that makes our bodies feel good? And we think about other ways that we can be kind to our bodies, whether that's the clothes we wear or how we sit. Are we able to be kind to ourselves? And then there's our relationship with others. Who is there for you when you really need them? Make a list. The top 3 people who are really there for you. Those are the people you want to cultivate relationships with. And then the other list is who really stresses you out. Who do you dread being around? And what are ways that you can minimize your contact with them? I'm not saying cut them off. I'm just saying, how can you manage that space in a way that is kind to yourself and kind to them as well? And then finally, we think about our relationship with the spiritual world. Whether you think about God or the universe or nature, we all have a spiritual element to ourselves which needs tending. So one of the things that I always like to ask people is, do you believe that we live in a benevolent universe? And the answer to that question is going to be a great determination of whether or not you're happy, whether or not you can be at peace within yourself. What spiritual practice do you have that brings peace and joy to your life? Make time for that. Cultivate that. Across all religions, there are practices of meditation and prayer. There are practices of gratitude and forgiveness. And these are things that we can engage in that make us healthy. Forgiveness can be a hard one, but we do it for ourselves. Forgiveness does not mean that I am going to let the other person back in my life and cultivate a relationship with them. It could mean that in certain situations, but it doesn't need to. Forgiveness simply means that I am not going to hold anger and bitterness in my heart, because that eats away at me and it does nothing to them. So a great forgiveness practice is to just, when you think of the other person, when you think of the incident, to say, I bless you with love and I release you from my life. It's an easy way to just start letting go of some of the anger and bitterness that we can hold inside when we're not forgiving. And then finally, when we think about self-care, there are some things that we might think of that might come immediately to mind that actually aren't truly self-care. So when I get up in the morning, I love to make my coffee. But did you know the caffeine actually isn't great for self-care? It is both the cause of and the cure for a lack of sleep, but it can promote all kinds of problems in our bodies, such as high blood pressure. It can increase our stress levels. Another one is alcohol and screens. How many of us think about Netflix and chill? And screen time actually overwhelms our prefrontal cortex so that we are less able to regulate our emotions. We aren't as able to think creatively about solutions to things. Our prefrontal cortex is in charge of all kinds of good stuff. And when we overwhelm it, we get stressed out and overwhelmed so much more quickly. And alcohol, we all think about, let's get the kids to bed and let's have a cup of wine, a glass of wine, but that's not really a great thing either. Alcohol can actually wake us up in the middle of the night because it may seem like at first we're relaxed, but it also can be a stimulant that can wake us up later. And it can cause damage to our liver and all sorts of other things. And then finally, multitasking. So as caregivers, we are all the time trying to multitask, right? We are trying to do all the things so that we can get it done faster. And what actually happens again is overwhelming our prefrontal cortex, and we get less done and we do it less well. So anytime that we can pause and do one thing and really focus on the one thing in front of us, we will feel more peace. Our brain will be able to remember and to do it well in a way that we would not be able to do if we were multitasking. So again, self-care, healthy self-care means cultivating healthy relationships with ourselves, with others, and with our spiritual world. I hope that this has been helpful for you, and I hope that you see that it doesn't mean needing to do some massive life changes. Just small things can help in everyday living.